Hello everyone. You are in the AutoCraft shop and today we will be repairing an old BMW F20 after a collision with a truck. The car was damaged when moving from the right lane. The truck driver noticed the car late. By this time he had already managed to damage the rear left door on the BMW with his right wheel, the rear fender and scratch the bumper. Of the spare parts we have a used door and a rear quarter. The condition of the door is basically normal but its color is metallic black and the body is solid black. This did not bother the BMW owner at all. He wants to save money and asked not to repaint the doors but only to polish the scratches. Let's start repairing. First of all, the bumper was removed and the taillight was changed to a crumpled donor door. But the door did not close. I had to cut down the jammed fender metal with a chisel to close the door and make sure that the gaps were normal. Having understood that the door is in the correct position, we push the wheel arch outwards using hydraulics from the inside. We need not so much to straighten the arch as to straighten the wrinkles on the mudguard. Here we have a donor. Initially, the owner of the car asked not to paint the fender but only to paint over the repair joints. But looking at the donor, it became clear that the entire element would have to be painted. The fender was badly damaged during transportation. The arch also has damage and a joint with the door. The arch is damaged not only in the middle part but also near the threshold. There is also damage in the area of the junction with the bumper. The fender is cut too short and we will not be able to make a joint at the top. Most likely we will cut here. We mark the future places of the cut. We also mark the drilling sites with a core and begin to remove the part from the donor. Here we have such a dismantled part. Since there is no way to separate this part from the donor on the spot without damage, we cut off a little with a margin. Now using a heat gun we heat up the sealant on which the parts on the BMW are glued and tear off the metal we do not need. We separate the fender as usual with a piece of mudguard so that the welding place is taken away from the edge of the arch as far as possible. At the same time we straighten the damaged fender and remove the sealant from the mudguard at the future welding site. Having prepared the donor part, we proceed to work with the body. On the body we drill and cut off the damaged part and cut off the mudguard. We remove the sealant and install the donor. Installing the donor in the correct position. This is an even gap along the door at the bottom. The edge of the end of the fender and the door coincides. And only after that we mark the places of the final cut, along which the donor will be joined. We cut off all the excess and weld the lining of the seam along the entire length of the future joint, both on the front side of the fender and in the doorway. We install the donor, fix it in the correct position and start the control assembly. Install the bumper, taillight and close the door. We make sure that all the gaps are even and the donor is in the correct position. We disassemble everything, remove the rear light bumper and also remove the donor door and prepare for welding. Despite minor damage on the donor fender, it still has the correct shape, while the fender on the body was damaged by the wheel and does not have the bend that it should be. It's very visible now. It is impossible to press the fender to the body as this will be wrong and the seam will go deep. And in order to make the correct shape, the painter will have to use a lot of putty. Therefore we will adjust the body to the fender and not vice versa. We cling to the body with the spotter and we pull the damaged part out, making welding tacks passing along the entire horizontal seam. In this way we got an even semicircular joint, as it should be on an intact part. We start welding the seam. The seam as always is welded in a run of 2 or 3 centimeters. We go 10 centimeters forward and then back, and so preventing the metal from overheating we get a continuous seam. Having welded the fender from the outside, we go to the inside of the mudguard. There the joint turned out with a slight overlap of 5 mm, so we make tacks of 5 to 7 mm every 3 centimeters. After that we grind the seam, apply primer and apply polyurethane sealant. On this, the tin work is completed. We install all the removed parts and send the car for painting. The car came from painting. We removed the parts that were installed specifically for the painter so that he can correctly make a plane. We spray with an acrylic primer in places where an wash primer was previously applied. After the primer dries in all possible places, fill in the anti-corrosion compound. As a rule, we fill the anti-corrosion compound with the help of a compressor because it comes out of the gun under pressure and creates a cloud in the inner cavity which sits on the entire inner surface of the part. The anti-corrosion composition is applied and we begin the final assembly of the car. And this is the final result of our work. Well-painted detail, even gaps between bumper and fender and between fender and taillight. This is what the door frame looks like. The fender was specially cut off closer to the edge in order to preserve the factory spot welding under the rubber band, so that later, when selling, when removing the rubber band there would be an impression that the wing was not changed. This is how the junction of the fender and the door looks on the street in natural light, and everything seems to be fine. I remind you that we did not paint the door at the request of the BMW owner. This is a donor door. And this is what the same joint looks like under artificial lighting. What is the difference between black metallic and black solid? Friends, I remind you that we are trying to shoot interesting videos for you, and you in turn press something under the video, write comments, and do not forget to subscribe. We are starting the repair of the next car. See you soon.